What's up, guys? This is JZNES back again to talk about, well, Persona 4 and other RPGs and whatnot. Because I thought about it, and making a video specifically on Persona 4 is a really hard thing to do. I do love Persona 4. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It's actually one of the only games where the hype of the game was so massive that when I went to play the game, I thought there's no way this game's hype could like possibly live up to the game. The game couldn't possibly live up to the hype. Another one like that is Metal Gear Solid 4 for me, which is pretty interesting because both of those games definitely did live up to the hype, and both of those are 4s, but in this case, you didn't really have to play the other games. And I was really worried about that, too, is playing the other games. Do I need to play the other Persona games leading up to this? Or is it okay that I haven't played those games, right? And it ended up being fine. You can totally play Persona 4 or any of the Persona games without having played the other Persona games. My only suggestion there is if you can play Persona 4, and especially Persona 4 Golden, I really wouldn't recommend the PS2 version here because it's a lot harder and there's a lot of content missing and it really detracts from the overall experience. But then again, I know, and I'm going to get sidetracked here by saying this, but I know that the Vita version, that you can play on this fucker here, this thing's gotten like really expensive, and I got lucky because back in the day I was kind of just kind of a big fan of the Vita or whatever, or I wanted to give it a chance, and I was looking for some killer apps for it, and I bought this game not expecting a whole lot because it looked like any other, turn-based RPG or whatever. I was wrong, by the way. It's not like any other turn-based RPG, but I heard about it and I heard good things about it. It was literally on every Vita game list ever, and I still agree with that. It's the whole reason to own this guy right here, aside from like Muramasa, the Demon Blade remake or whatever. There's some decent games on the Vita, but a lot of those games you can get on other systems and whatnot. Sort of like the Wii U, how they've ported everything out of there, but not the point. The point is that I really wasn't expecting a whole lot going into the game, and I ended up being blown away. As soon as I played the game, I like got really addicted and attached to the game, and I remember just it was crazy. I remember sitting there. I remember it was Halloween night. It must have been like, fuck, I don't know, like when was it? I think it was like 2015 is when it was. So it had been like 5 years ago or something. I've literally played this game every year since then. Now that I'm thinking about it, except for maybe last year. But I played it multiple times some years, so I guess that more than makes up for it. And I showed this game to my friends, and so I was always experiencing this game in some way or another. And it's always a game that I love recommending to people, even though the problem is it's so hard to get your hands on now, especially now. Geez, people back in the day didn't want to spend $30 on a Vita TV. Now they certainly don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on one. And I feel really stupid for not buying more of them when they were at $30 and more copies of the game when it wasn't $80 or whatever. It's a big regret of mine because I looked at them back then and I'm like, no, I'll let somebody else buy it so they can experience it. I hope some people did buy it, and because I made a big financial blunder there. But I did get all of my friends to get it, except for my friend John. Everyone else has it. Nick and Jameson may have. They've all got it. So that's good for them. They made a good financial investment there. I'm glad Jameson got it, too. I mean, I didn't think he had it, and then I asked him the other day, and he's like, yeah, I have both of them. I probably bought the game for him or something. Pretty sure I did. I know I at least bought him Dancing All Night one time. Which is why I think I have this small version. I must have given him the game. I've got like a big version of Dancing All Night up there that I bought for myself, along with my Big Catherine and my Persona 5 and all that, and like the Catherine full body. It's all up there where you can't see it. But yeah. But I brought down all the small versions. I didn't bring anything down. Actually, I just took it off my shelf over there. But anyway, so Persona 4, when I started playing it, I remember it was Halloween. Must have been 2015 or 2014, 15, yeah, probably 2015. I remember I just got super addicted to it. I was in college, and it was kind of like I got really distracted with this game for a minute. Like, oh man, it was bad. And I was like, I definitely did skip a few classes to play this game. Few days of school, definitely. I played it like 1 week solid, just all the way through. So let's think about that. That must be like 8 hours a day or something I played each day for like a week. Because it's 60 hours is what I put into it. That's about a typical run through of Persona 4 Golden. I did a 58-hour run just now, because I just replayed it now, but I was trying, the point of this, the whole point of this video, I know, I'm sorry, but to get back to the point, like I said, to review Persona 4 is such a hard thing to do. I could talk about it, I'll probably talk about it a lot in this video, maybe I'll do a different video where I just reminisce about it or something, or maybe it'll be this video, I don't know, but the thing is about Persona 4 is that I was trying to figure out, for somebody who hadn't gotten into video games yet, like, I introduced my friend Jameson to this game. This was his first RPG as far as I remember. Yeah, we definitely played this before we played Pokemon. But I wanted to see if this was somebody's first RPG, if they could go through it. And I think he was definitely a good guinea pig for that. So, I mean, and I was there with him. That's one thing that you gotta consider in pondering this question. I was trying to think about what's a good beginner RPG to get somebody into. And my criteria was kind of that this person wanted a lot of story, and she kind of wanted, like, gameplay that wasn't, like, action-based gameplay. So I'm, like, thinking, well, not like an action RPG, but let's get her into, like, turn-based RPGs, right? Like, that kind of stuff. Like, let's go... I was thinking we can go old school, or we could go, if Persona 4 was more readily available, it would have been that would have been the way to do it, but that ends up being a problem because I don't want to just lend somebody a $300 system or whatever. I'm not sure if that's what it's worth. It's worth a whole ton now. I hate that it is. I just wish it was worth $30 like it used to be, or $60 or something. It would be nice. People could go and buy it and whatnot. But point is, I've had this topic on my mind for a minute now about what are good beginner RPGs to introduce somebody to. And I posted it in one of my Facebook groups trying to kind of get some feedback, and they were saying games like Final Fantasy 3 and stuff. If you watch my review for that, you would know that I don't necessarily agree with that. It's even for me, like a seasoned gamer, it's a little bit hard to do without like a guide or whatever if you don't pay close enough attention, like I don't most of the time. But, so a lot of people were saying Super Mario RPG, which I definitely agree with that. But no offense to that game, it really doesn't have the story that I was really looking for. I was trying to think of something that had a really good story. Thought ended up coming to my mind later that maybe RPG wasn't the best genre, and then I thought of Life is Strange, and I'm like, well, there you go. That's probably the game that she's actually going to want to play, is Life is Strange. But not what even matters at this point. The idea of my thought was, hey, what's a good RPG, right? So for beginners. And yeah, so I was thinking about it, and I've got a lot of stuff on ROMs and emulation and all that, and so one of my other thoughts was, okay, well, if we can't do Persona 4, and if we definitely can't do Persona 4 on PS2, because that would be the only thing you could, like, really emulate at this point. What about, like, Dragon Quest VIII? That's another really good, kind of pretty simple RPG. There's, like, some sort of semi-complicated elements to it sometimes. It's not always the most straightforward, but for the most part, it's a pretty straightforward game. It's pretty bare bones, it's old school, but the game holds your hand well enough to where you can probably get through it. You can, like, talk to your party members, they'll tell you kind of what you have to do. That's good stuff right there. You introduce Dragon Quest 1 or 2, that's a little harder to do because they don't really hold your hand, and they just kind of want to throw you in the shit and say, here, go for it, Okay. Well, another good, like, beginner RPG. I mean, okay, so with Dragon Quest 8, you get the problem of, like, okay, you can't really play that on, like, emulation unless you have, like, a controller or whatever, right? So my other thought was, of course, what's the gold standard of RPGs? Well, Pokemon for beginners, beginner RPGs. Pokemon, right? That's what everyone loves to play. I mean, I've loved that series since I was a kid, and I definitely know that would be a good entry point for new RPG players. But then again, Pokemon doesn't have the greatest story ever or anything, and it's an kids anime storyline, basically. So, um, I like it. Obviously, I love the Pokemon series and the storyline there, and Gold version or Heart Gold or any of those, or even just the original. It's a good place to kind of get your feet wet into RPGs or whatever. But I thought maybe Persona 4, which a lot of people in my group were saying is a pretty complicated RPG, but on paper, I got somebody to play it as their first RPG. Now, granted, like I said, I was there to experience it with them, to help them make the right choices and help them make the right, use personas and whatnot. But I tried to, for the most part, uh, stay out of it and let him do kind of his own thing. But what I realized when we were playing through it was very easy mode is the baby mode of RPGs. Like, it's so baseline that it's so easy to just try to get anybody into or whatnot. In terms of difficulty in battles and all of that kind of stuff, you get more experience, more money. That's what makes it easy. So what I did was I played through Persona 4 myself on very easy mode, which, like, okay, I'm a seasoned RPG player, but I tried to use some of the, like, weaker characters, like Chie, who doesn't even get anything past her medium ice moves, and I tried to use, like, low-grade gear. I kind of gave up on that later on because I just was an experiment for a while. I used Chie and Teddy, Teddy's actually pretty good. Realizing it later, once I actually had used him, he's pretty good. So I kind of gave up on that and just used Chie, Yukiko, and Naoto by the end to make a trifecta of a girl thing, because I did this run this time around where I dated all of the girls. I had some trouble with Ai at the end because her social link is ridiculous when it comes to dating her. You have to like do this back ass stuff to get through it. It's stupid, but it didn't really end up mattering. By the way, I don't recommend doing that because I knew this was going to be how it goes, but on Valentine's Day they make you feel really bad about dating all of the girls, which is at the end of the game, so it kind of feels like, it kind of feels bad. It feels like a big snag and a wrench in it, and they kind of, I don't want to spoil it too much, but they kind of all confront you in their own way, and it just gets really messy and bad. And it's not even that they, like, all fight or anything over you, it's just like, they make you feel bad about it, so... Yeah, I don't think I'll probably ever do that again, but I had to do it at least once, because I've already done all of the dating all of the girls once each, so... Because I've done all the social links. I did a full social link run one time. That was pretty cool. So yeah, but anyway, point is, I was trying to think about some good beginner RPGs, and so really at the end of the day, if you're not looking for, like, the most in-depth story or something, the Pokemon series, Mario RPG is probably another good kind of starting point. Because it's not too difficult, it's not too long, and all of that kind of stuff. But the Golden Sun series, I was going to say Golden Sun is a pretty good beginner RPG also. That was another one that I was thinking about, because that's another kind of basic RPG. There's some more elements to that game too as well. So kind of hard to say. In terms of, like, what you would want to start somebody out with for RPGs, but I would definitely say, like, the Pokemon series, or maybe, like, Dragon Quest VIII or something, to where, or Mario RPG or something to that effect. I don't really think any of the Final Fantasy games, as far as I know, I haven't played 7 or anything yet, so don't kill me yet, but are, like, a really super great starting point. As far as I can think of, like, none of those really stand out to me as, like, a super great starting point. I think Final Fantasy Tactics would be, like, a good starting point for a tactical RPG. kind of thing, but we're not really talking about that. The other one that I considered is this guy here, Earthbound. I didn't want to take it out of there because I didn't want to hassle with stuff too much, but that's another good one, especially if you have the guide or whatever, or if you're emulating it, then you have the PDF, which I found online, which is pretty cool. So I did that as well, but yeah. But Persona 4, I was trying to think if it would be a really good beginner RPG. Now, there's a lot of complicated elements to it, but my argument here is that a lot of those complicated elements are just real-life things. So, like, when you go and spend time someplace to up your stats or whatnot, you, in Persona 4, because you have these, like, different stats, like knowledge and intelligence and all that kind of stuff, and you need those for certain... There's a social link system in Persona 4 where basically the characters in the world, there's like 24 different characters in the world that you, 22, but whatever. You know what I mean? There's 24 different social links of characters that you can go and interact with in your free time to kind of progress friendships with them, and eventually you can go even further with that with the girl characters. You can go out with them, which I did all of them this time. There's 7 of them that you can go out with, which is funny. But I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would recommend just sticking to one. But especially for your first playthrough, maybe somebody like Yukiko or Rise or somebody. Naoto is kind of a second, third playthrough kind of character for that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, so there's elements like the stat upgrades and whatnot, which are just like real life things. So you go and you spend time at the food place, the Chinese place. You go spend time there, and one of the bowls will up your stats in this area, and it tells you which stat, and that kind of stuff. So it's like not super complicated stuff. It like shows you, and you kind of get the idea after a while that in certain conversations you need more of the stat to make certain choices and whatnot, which will get you bonus points basically, like when you're doing these social links. So to make the social links go faster, essentially, let's like put it like that, at a base level. Like there's a lot of elements like that. There's a lot of elements, and that's the real thing. There's a lot of meat to how many systems there are. There's lots of systems that are implemented into the game, like that stat system, social stats, I guess they could be called. In the Persona. No, Persona fusing. I did just put the 2 words together. Persona fusing. Actually, he says bear soda. I was gonna say Teddy says something like that, doesn't he? Yeah. So like the Persona fusing's a little complicated. There's a lot of great guides online. I still don't necessarily understand all of it. I've gotten to a point where I kind of get what's going on with it, but usually I just use online guides. I use online guides for this game for a lot of different elements of it. And, I can understand to somebody who's new to RPGs that might not be, like, the best thing that they need to sit here and read a bunch of guides or whatever. But my argument to that is you really don't have to do a lot of that stuff to get through the game. It's going to enhance and help your experience, but if you sit down, and you know what, the game spends like an obnoxious amount of time at the beginning, man, it's not too much of a detriment, but like so much time at the beginning explaining to you about each little aspect of itself. So as long as you're reading and kind of paying attention to that, then you'll definitely be on the right track to progressing and doing good making it through the game in a good way, So yeah, so what I'm thinking, like Persona fusing is kind of, it's a little tricky to get the hang of at first if you don't really know what you're doing, and the game doesn't really explain it to you super well. It expects you to kind of figure out some of that on your own. But then again, like I said, there's always a guide for that online. So that's one element that I always get kind of weary on. So I know my friend Nick, like when he first played the game, didn't fuse a Persona until after like the 5th dungeon or something, and I'm just like, yeah, this isn't really how you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to like fuse these things. And what's cool is the compendium actually gives you, you can use all of the personas that you found so far. So like when you go into shuffle time, there's a thing called shuffle time after each battle. You pick up certain cards, and some of them are personas, and some of them are upgrades and whatnot. But when you get the persona in shuffle time, as long as you have it in your set of like 12 or whatever personas for like, you know, that moment, then it'll get registered in the compendium, which you can go back and buy personas at any time that you have registered there, but they automatically get registered. The only thing registering it does on the menu is put the persona that you have in there with your specific moves and whatnot, in case you wanted those moves on that persona, which is a good point. But yeah, and I mean, then you get like really complicated personas and stuff, but you don't have to use all of those, especially on very easy mode. I wouldn't imagine you would have to use these like super complicated personas, because I kind of breeze through the game. Not that I'm a good metric of an indicator for that, but I don't remember my friend Jameson also having any significant trouble with it, even though I was sitting there, but I think he could have figured it out on his own, kind of thing. But it scares me when I think about it. Can somebody figure that out on their own? Can they figure all this stuff out? You know, it's one thing to sit there with them and do it, but another thing for them to do it on their own, kind of thing. Because I know I missed a lot of stuff in my first run through as well. But it's a game that's also meant to be experienced multiple times. You can find all the stuff and do all the stuff and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, which is cool. And there's a lot of variety in each playthrough that you do. It's taken me, like, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 or so, I don't know, tons of playthroughs to I don't think I've done 15, but like at least 10 or so playthroughs. 10? I don't even know if it's that many, but it's taken me a handful of playthroughs to even kind of have experienced everything and done all of the stuff that there is to do. I think I finally kind of completed the game in a sense, but you know, 5 years later or whatever, it's a pretty big, it's pretty big that it's taken me that long to, well, playing this game constantly to kind of complete this game finally, like, done all this stuff. I didn't get all the trophies yet, because, like, one of them is, like, listen to all the Risei's battle lines or whatever, and it's like, okay, can't really control that too much, so, you know, whatever. Not super caring about that, you know, like, I got the one where, and I have a picture of this somewhere, where when you do all of the social links in one run, when you get to a certain social link, when you get to the end of that social link at the end of the game, it levels up, and then you'll have maxed out all of the social links. So I do have that picture somewhere of when I did that, and it took me a long time. I had to actually do that run through twice, because I ended up fucking up right at the end on the first run. I wrote myself some notes, and I went through it again, and then I remember getting to the end of that run, and the old lady was like one of the only ones I couldn't get through, because you have to like go to her on Sundays and holidays. And then I figured, I was like one rank off or whatever, and then I figured out that you can, if you do things in a certain pattern, you can hang out with her on Christmas. So I did that, and it ended up working out, and I ended up getting the full run there. But I thought that run was screwed for a while there too, which was pretty disheartening. But I figured it out because I'm smart. But yeah, it literally comes down to the wire when you're trying to do that full run. But you don't have to do that. You can do as many or as few social links as you really want. But social links help it to where, especially the ones in your party, they'll give you certain bonuses when you're in battle and stuff. Like once you get higher, they can take a killing blow for you. Like if you were gonna die, one thing about the battles is the hero, when he dies, the whole thing's just over. So you kind of have to start over. And in the PS2 version, you'd have to start over from your last save. On this version, the Vita version, which is one of the reasons I heavily prefer it, you just start over, I think, from the beginning of the floor of whatever dungeon you're on, which is cool. So yeah, so that's pretty cool. And you can also start at any floor. You don't have to go through the whole dungeon again, like you do in the PS2 version. If you leave the dungeon at any time, you have to go through the whole dungeon again on the PS2 version, unless you are on the top floor. So that gets really annoying, like fast. But like, it's hard because that's the only version most people can get their hands on, which kind of sucks. Which definitely makes me think, hey, this game should probably be like on the Switch or something, right? And that's something I definitely believe in, is that the game should be on Switch, because it's a game that everyone really should experience, because it's just one of those really kind of special games that you only come across, once in a lifetime kind of thing. For me, it's my favorite RPG, so that's saying a lot. When Dragon Quest VIII stuck in there since 2005 or whatever, like that was my favorite RPG, but this one knocked it out of the park. It just, as soon as I played it, I just kind of knew like that it belonged, near the top of my best games list. So my favorite games list, I guess that would be my top 10 in other words. But yeah, like, so there's a lot of complicated elements like that, and but doing the social links naturally helps you in your battles and stuff too, which is cool. It's all synergistic. It's like poetry. It rhymes or whatever. But it all has an effect on each other. Even the social links that don't have anything to do. See, they all have an arcana attached to them. So, like, for instance, Yukiko is the priestess arcana or whatever. And she's one of your party members. But, like, let's say you do the tower arcana, which is this kid that you tutor named Shu. And if you do his thing, at the end of every social link, when you get to level 10, you can fuse the ultimate persona of that arcana, which is cool. So that, ties into persona fusing and stuff. So it's like, it's all synergistic. It's great. But, the other thing is, if you have tower arcana personas, then you can also, they also get certain benefits and bonuses. Like when you fuse them, you get extra experience based on how many levels into the social link you are. So it's pretty cool. It's like there's a lot of great systems like that in this game that kind of all tie into each other, which is fantastic. And so it's really unique because then at the same time, I mean, this is what the Persona series is kind of known for, but then at the same time, when you're getting to know these characters, who are characters that relate to the dungeons. In this game, which is a reason I can't, I don't really like 5 quite as much, is that in this game, the dungeons are tied to the characters, and they're all these like self-reflection moments for the characters, and they kind of have to deal with their baggage and whatnot on a basic enough level. It's like the start baseline of their dealing with their thing they don't like about themselves, or just something that they need to kind of get past, sort of thing. So, but then in the social links, they progress upon that, and you get to go and hang out with them whenever you kind of choose, whenever they're available or whatnot, to kind of see that story progress. So let's say you didn't really connect with, I don't know, whatever character, Chie, for instance. She doesn't really have her own dungeon, but she's like partway through the Yukiko dungeon. But let's just, I mean, you don't have to do Chie's social link. You can just leave that on the cutting room floor and you do whoever's in your party. Or you don't even have to do who's in your party if you don't want. It's probably good that you do, though. Which this round, I had Chie in my party, and she was the first girl that I kind of dated. So there's that. I mean, just because I had never dated her, because I find her voice very annoying in this version. In the PS2 version, it's actually a lot better. But, yeah, I know my friends disagree with that statement. Some of them do, and some of them, the majority of us think otherwise. But I've got a big Chie stand in our group, so his girl in his first run through was Chie. I never know if he played through the game again, which is unfortunate. But so yeah, I really love this game, and I know I've just kind of been talking with the mechanics and whatnot so far, but all of that stuff, is slightly complicated. So it's like, is it a good beginner RPG? Like, And the other thing is, the reason that I would kind of argue towards, especially for somebody who wants like a good story. I mean, the story's fantastic. It's a great murder mystery that keeps stringing you along until the very, very end. Like, if you haven't seen the credits, and even if you do see the credits one or two or three times, you know, in three different endings or whatever, you might still have not gotten the true ending. There's a lot of obtuse stuff you got to do to kind of get the true ending, but I don't necessarily know that it's stuff you couldn't figure out on your own, but I don't know. Anyway, so like, yeah, like there's a lot of extra content that you would maybe miss on your first run, and then that's why it's also good for another run through, especially with the true ending and all that stuff. Well, there's the golden ending, which is like it's in Persona 4 Golden, and there's a true ending and stuff. Okay, so like kind of the differences between the PS2 version and the Golden version is there's a lot more time to do stuff. You also have a nighttime, which you don't have in the original game for some reason, which is really odd. But I mean, you have it, but you can't go out and like hang out with your friends or whatever, like you can in the Golden version. And doing that will give you extra bonus points, like I was talking about earlier, to kind of progress the social link faster and whatnot, and that's cool, and I like that. And pro tip for anybody who's has like a free night, or it's raining or something, and you don't have to check the midnight channel, go to the shrine and pick up a blessing for whichever character that you're trying to progress with. I kind of forgot about that until the end of this run through, but I definitely did remember that because of my my full social link run through or whatnot. So because you kind of have to do that to be able to progress in that run through when you're doing all of the characters. So yeah, so it's kind of customizable in the sense that you do as many or as little of the social links and the other things as you really want to do. And you know, cutting yourself off from even the social stats and whatnot, you will miss some opportunities and some questions that you, or answers to questions that you can't really answer to people, and it'll kind of affect your social links. For certain social links, like the Nanako and the Dojima social link, these are your family characters in this game, like your uncle and your cousin there, that you're living with in Inaba. That's another reason. Inaba's a small town kind of area, and I kind of relate to that more because you know, that's kind of where I live, is kind of a small town like that. But in Persona 5, it's this big city, and it just doesn't feel as personable to me. This is my opinion. I'm very, very much in the minority here because so many people vastly prefer Persona 5, which I don't really understand because I think that the characters in 4 are better. I know, it's the whole Persona 5, Persona 4 relation video here, but that's not what I'm getting at. I'm just saying, like, everything's a little bit better in Persona 4, other than maybe the flashy action in 5, which is pretty cool. I also like how the Personas are separate from the enemies. So the enemies can just be whatever they need for that dungeon, and then you get your Personas afterwards. You're not recruiting Personas and whatnot like the old games and 5, which is still a cool system. It's different, and I'm glad that they did something different, but also there's a lot of missing potential that they could have gone over in Persona 4 that I was kind of looking forward to seeing how they progress on that in sequels. Whereas in 5, the dungeons are more focused around the villains, which didn't really mean a whole lot to me in terms of versus the storyline of we're connecting the dungeons to the characters, which worked a lot better, and it made you feel more invested in your party and your characters and whatnot, which I thought was just brilliant. You know, in terms of RPGs, the dungeons never have anything to do with your characters for the most part. Your characters might have moments in the dungeons or something, but like they're never like focused around your characters, which is a really cool touch, and like nothing else has really done any, you know, no other game has really done that, which is kind of unfortunate because it's such a good idea. It's such a good way to kind of convey your characters and kind of have them, you know, in that sense, that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, like there's a lot of elements to the game, but I think that the elements aren't if you pay enough attention, the elements aren't super confusing in terms of the fact that they're relatable. They're real world things that you do. Going out to a place or reading a book or something will get you more stats, which makes sense. You know, that just kind of makes sense. You know, like it's kind of obvious stuff. But the game tells you these things too. But it's like the game doesn't tell you everything. Had I not known about like if I guess if there weren't the exams, then I wouldn't have known to go to the library ever, and I wouldn't have known that's even a location. But it is. It's a location that you can go to, and you can hang out there anytime and study and whatever. But so pro tip, if you're trying to get your knowledge stat up, you go to the library. There's certain books that you can like read faster and like get knowledge stat up faster and all of that stuff. There's like part-time jobs and stuff. Most of those are social links, but some of them you can just kind of do in your room, like making envelopes and translating and stuff. And those will give you money. And so it's like all stuff that like makes sense to the real world. Like it's not some foreign concept that's like this fantasy RPG thing. It's like a real world stuff is going on here. Like, you know, stuff that most people can relate to, which is cool. And that's why I also thought, you know, outside of the characters and the story being really great, I thought that maybe that's something cool to think about, is that, you know, it is a real world RPG. You're in the real world. You do go into a dream world or whatever kind of thing, but there's a real world segment and there's that segment which is more about the RPG gameplay. But I mean, everything ties into each other, but you know, like it's cool how both elements tie into each other and how you get to choose which characters you want to see more of and then which characters you don't want to see anything of. You know, they kind of force you to start some social links or kind of notice characters or whatnot, and there's a lot of great little touches. You'll see characters in the background of scenes that you're like walking to school or whatever for like the first few months or like month or something. You'll see the other social links in the background, like all of them, like, which is pretty cool. If you like in hindsight, once you notice, there's little touches, like you'll see little hints to later events in certain scenes that you wouldn't have noticed the first time around once you kind of know what's going on. And you like, maybe you're replaying through the game or something, you'll like notice, oh wow, that was there, and I didn't even really notice about that. And it's like, I mean, you know, there's a whole big one of those for pretty late in the game, but if you've played the game, you kind of know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so it's just cool how there's a lot of stuff like that that you can notice on repeat playthroughs and stuff. And then but yeah, you really can, you get to do what you want to do in the game for the most part. And that's another thing, is that they give you a lot of time. And what I think what I was getting at with this like a million years ago, what I was talking about is on the Vita version, they give you extra months to, well, like an extra month or so. Yeah, a little bit of extra time to work on your social links and kind of just round out the game and, you know, kind of do your final stretch of the game there and work on some stuff. So that's pretty cool. There are certain social links that kind of have deadlines to them, which I found out the hard way the first time playing through the game. You definitely want to do the Nanako and Dojima social links a little bit earlier if you can manage it, because eventually in the, like, I don't know, like the second half of the game or something, like you just can't do that. So, yeah. So there's little cutoffs and deadlines everywhere that you don't want to miss, but it's like real life. Sometimes if you don't do certain things, you just kind of miss the opportunity to do those things, you know? So, like, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Obviously, we've been listening to the music. I mean, I don't know if we've gotten to any of the better great tracks. I've been really thinking about the game, but the music in the game is fantastic. I think it fits the mood super well. It makes it feel very anime-esque. The graphics and the scenery is just really well done too. The cutscenes look really fantastic whenever those kind of come in. And all the characters have like great designs. They're like super memorable designs, like super, like they're so well done. They're just super iconic to myself. I actually have figures sitting right up there of all my favorites, Naoto and Marie and Yukiko and Elizabeth from 3, and where's wait a second, didn't I have one more? I've got a Risei one up there too somewhere. Oh, okay, she's kind of hidden behind my diva figure. But yeah, so you know, I like the characters in this game. They're fantastic, and they've got really relatable stories and whatnot. I got my cool Persona 4 shirt here. The only character I didn't really get to play with, do anything with this time was Kanji, because who's which is cool because a lot of these characters that are in your main party there are voiced by famous voice people. Risei is Laura Bailey. You may know her from Catherine. She's the Catherine, and she does a bunch of other roles like that. Troy Baker, from The Last of Us and all sorts of games like that. He's Kanji, so that's pretty cool. Lots of kind of famous voice people there. Not all of them are famous voices, but it's cool to see little voices like that are in there. Yeah, so like, just and aesthetically, the game just looks like really good, especially the Vita version. This version is like really foggy, funnily enough, because of the fog in the game. But the Vita version here is golden. That is, looks pretty crisp on a Vita TV, and looks even crisper on your little Vita there. It's not like as good as I remember it looking, but like resolution wise, it looks nice. Like the PS2 version definitely kind of has some problems with that unless you like emulate it, and then you have your own problems there emulating it. And the game is just much tougher and much less forgiving. The shuffle time kind of sucks. There's lots of things that kind of aren't as good about that version. I played through it once, and it just really wasn't as good as the golden version. And I know a lot of people who prefer the PS2 version, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, like, sure, if you think so. I mean, Chie is better in that game. That's the one little thing I'd like to point out about what's superior about the PS2 version. But yeah, and so it's just a really good game, and it's wonderful, and there's so many great things to do in the game, and just filling out, doing all the social links and going through the character arcs that the characters go through and all of that, and you're there going through it with them and kind of making all the right choices and whatnot, and kind of learning about these characters is pretty cool. It's a really great element to the game, and a lot of them, there's a handful of ones that aren't like so great. Like there's this Saki kid, his brother or her brother is like one of the worst socialings, and he's just so boring, and he's all mourning and all this shit. It's just he's so bad. But she's not the best socialing, but she's fine. Like, there's still some relatable stuff in there. The nurse link isn't like the greatest one. But you get a lot of resolution for a lot of the links in the storylines, which is pretty cool. There's just so much content in the game that I think it's just really well done. Like, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Yeah, I have a friend who says that, but yeah, I really don't know what else to say. Is it a great beginner RPG? I guess that's kind of up for you to decide, because I think that it certainly could be. I mean, I think other RPGs are honestly a lot harder to get beginner into, especially the more old school ones. There's a lot of elements that really just, they're kind of tough to wrap your head around, and I get that this game has a lot of those elements as well, but the game really is good at kind of pointing you in the right direction a lot of times. In battle, there's a weakness system, so there's like elements and whatnot, and what's interesting about that is that you could just like try all the elements and see, but a lot of times Risei or Teddy or somebody will just say like, hey, it's weak to this thing, or it's not weak to this thing, like like they'll just kind of tell you what it's weak to. So that makes it a lot easier, and that's not even just on very easy mode. That's like on, I think, all the modes as far as I know. Maybe not in the harder modes. I haven't really gotten into hard or very hard or whatever the fuck's after that, if there is after that, because Atlas like makes their games like super hard, very easy and easy. Whew. Very easy is like the easy mode, and then is this easy mode? Yeah, no, but you know, normal is like would be like they're easy, and then you know from there normal is basically the hard mode. It's kind of like Catherine back in the day or whatever, but yeah. So I'm just saying like there's a lot of elements like that that are pretty cool, but they're intuitive. You know, you kind of would get that stuff, but it might be better if you're going to start off somebody with that kind of element-based thing is the Pokemon series, because then they kind of understand what elements do what. They kind of understand that that's a system, and then once you get them to Persona 4, they'll kind of it's more basic system than the Pokemon's like 20 elements system or whatever. So but that's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean like there's a lot of hand holding that can be done in the Persona game, and it's like there's a lot of elements that'll like kind of point you in the right direction. So I feel like it can be a good beginner RPG, but that's for you to kind of decide for your situation of who you're trying to recommend it to. You know, I definitely think it has one of the best RPG storylines or just video game storylines of all time. Only rivaled by maybe Metal Gear or something to that effect, where like the whole game is like based on its storyline or whatever. But it's just one of these really special and like to me personally, the game just means so much. You know. Yeah, I love it. I think it's definitely, like I said, it's one of my favorite games of all time, and that's maybe me being a little bit biased, saying that it's a good beginner RPG because of that or something. But if anything, introduce them to a Pokemon game or a Golden Sun type of game, so they get kind of what are the tropes of RPGs. And then introduce them to Persona 4 if you're a little bit weary, or you know a Mario RPG or something, or Earthbound. I think even that's still. Honestly, I would even say Earthbound's a little bit harder than Persona 4 in terms of comparing it to the very easy mode or whatever, which is what you'd probably be sending a beginner into. You know, is very easy mode. So, even that would be a little bit harder. I would say that's an RPG that you might want to do like later on. But Persona 4, I could see it being a good beginner RPG, a good starting point for RPGs. I think it would definitely get somebody interested in the RPG idea and maybe the gameplay and whatnot. Sadly, most other RPGs that are turn-based RPGs, this is what we've been talking about this whole video. That's what I mean when I say an RPG is basically a turn-based RPG. But most other ones don't have a lot of the elements that make this game really good. So on that regard, if you're gonna make this a first RPG for somebody, it might be kind of hard to go back to other RPGs if that's what you're thinking. And at that rate, I would say maybe not, but that logic doesn't always hold up. Like, I like to kind of play things in order, so if you... So at that rate, if you're thinking like... Oh yeah. If you're thinking that you want to like try to introduce them to something before that, you know, older, so that it like kind of you could do a progression kind of thing, like I've been doing with my friend Jameson, with platformers and whatnot. Kind of been showing him the early platformers, so we can go all the way up to newer platformers and whatnot. But I didn't figure it was a really good idea to start him with a newer platformer and kind of take him back to try and control an older platformer, because then it just kind of the older ones don't feel as special, you know, if you played something better in that sense, which is kind of like this one. But I still feel like older RPGs can still feel great, but it's going to be a kind of a crazy comparison to Persona 4 because it's so unique and because it does so many things right, I would say. And then again, I mean, it'd be hard for me to believe, but I could totally see somebody not liking the game as well. But pretty much everyone I've ever introduced it to has been super into it or really wanted to give it a chance kind of thing. I'd say it's got kind of a slow start, but that's to introduce you to all of the elements, so that's only a point in favor of it being a good beginner RPG rather than not. So like I said, that's up for you to decide for whoever you're trying to recommend the RPG to, or for yourself. If you're thinking of playing it for yourself and thinking of you somehow have it and you somehow have the golden version, then yeah, it would possibly be a good beginning RPG for you, especially if you played a lot of other video games, you just haven't really gotten into the RPG genre, then yes, I would say definitely you could be pretty interested in this game. It's just like somebody who hasn't played a lot of video games, it might be harder to get them into this. If you're looking for a good story-based game for somebody who hasn't played a lot of video games, I would definitely recommend something more like Life is Strange or something to that effect. Because, I mean, it's purely story, basically. Basically, the whole thing of it is story. And, you know, what's cool about Life is Strange is it's kind of got a lot of the similar elements of a rudimentary sort of social link system, if you think about it, when you're just talking to people and making choices and hanging out with your friends and whatnot. And it's got a sort of similar story. Not to spoil too much about either game. I mean, I don't think I am by saying that, but there's a lot of similar elements that happen, and yeah, so I think that's pretty cool. Is that, you know, but yeah, if they want like a good story and you're trying to get them into video games, that might be a good starting spot. Might not be like a great bridging gap into like platforming games or something, because you don't really do any of that in Life is Strange, but it might be a good break into the social link system because it's very similar to that. There's a lot of social elements to Life is Strange as well. So that's what I'm thinking in terms of is this a great beginner RPG? And you know what? I did sort of get to talk about a lot of Persona 4 things. I didn't want to really talk about the story too much because, you know, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't played it. It's one of those stories that you definitely don't want to spoil for somebody who hasn't played it, kind of thing. So, I don't know, maybe in the future I can make like a more spoiler-heavy talk about it or something, but I think that the characters and the world of the game and the gameplay and all of that are just super fantastic, and the aesthetic is great, and just all the elements kind of come together to make one really brilliant game. And there's a lot of good thought-provoking things in the game, and very inspiring sort of things to somebody like myself who likes like the other world, kind of is one of these kind of dream worlds or whatnot, and that's kind of a thing I like, you know, in games and movies and books or whatever, you know, all sorts of media. That really resonates with me for whatever reason. Just, you know, a world outside of our own kind of thing. That's why people play video games to begin with, right? Is to kind of escape reality. But here's a game that, much like Ready Player One, also has a theme of, you know, that's great and all, but hey, also there's people out there, and you should really hang out with people if you can, and progress your real life social links, if you want to think of it like that, which is interesting. And that's another cool element of doing the character stuff. It's a lot of great, you know, just general advice for hanging out with people in life and whatnot. And so I think that's pretty cool. You know, there's people in situations that are pretty relatable to a lot of things people go through in their lifetime. So I imagine that there's a character in there for everyone. You know, one of those characters is going to resonate with somebody out there who's playing the game. So it's pretty, yeah. It's pretty, yeah. No, it's great, but it's such an epic game. You gotta play it if you haven't played it. Is it worth tracking down a Vita TV and stuff? Nah, probably just get the Vita, which is still pretty expensive, but it's less expensive. And try to get a copy of the game, you know, if you can, and play it that way. Hopefully someday they'll have Vita emulation to where you can play it like that. or whatnot. Yeah, so I really recommend the game. I guess the other thing I was going to talk about was right when I got the game, I was kind of in a Persona hype, and the next game to come out was Dancing All Night over there, which ended up being all right, but really in the arena games I ended up getting as well. They're okay. They're okay extensions of the story and whatnot, but the original ending to the game, they add a little piece on after the ending, but the original ending to the game is probably the best ending, and the little piece that they add on afterwards is wholly unnecessary. But these games are basically, the spin-off games, are basically just a big piece of that. Again, storyline-wise, gameplay-wise, they're great. I mean, if you like sort of rhythm games, the dancing games, fine. It's good. I mean, it's got good elements, and you get to listen to all the awesome music from Persona and extended versions of this music where they add new second verses and whatnot, which is fantastic. So if anything, it's good for that. And the arena games are cool too, gameplay-wise, but there's a lot of story smushed in between the gameplay. But it's a good extension of the Persona 3 and Persona 4 stories, which is pretty cool. There's also the Persona Q games and that stuff like that, which, like, I'm going to get to eventually, but nothing really stacks up to Persona 4 in terms, Golden, that is, in terms of any of the other Persona stuff. I would say, if you're looking to get into the Persona series after 4, 3 is also a pretty good game. A lot of people don't like the portable version here on the PSP. I like that version. I think that's a good version. They really do need to remake it because the original 3, you can't use your party members, and it's kind of like a Final Fantasy 13 kind of thing where you just kind of set them up with commands and say, here, go for it. I don't know why they did that, but it's really odd. But a lot of people don't, because the portable version on the PSP kind of has a lot of it's almost like the world is a menu kind of thing. You kind of have to say, like, go here. It's not like you walk there like you would in the PS2 version and whatnot. And that's, in that case, the PS2 version's almost better of Persona 3. But there's a lot of cool elements. A lot of elements that actually, just some stuff that carries over to Persona 4 even, locations and whatnot. Not enough to have to make you play the Persona 3 game first, but I recommend the PSP version if you don't mind that kind of stuff. Try it for yourself. I'd say it's a good game. It's not as good as Persona 4, obviously. There's 5. 5 is also a good game. I like 5. I complain about it a lot, but I do like 5. I just found some of the time management stuff to be a little ridiculous, especially after playing Persona 4. This is why I say you should play Persona 4 first, because I don't want you to be ruined for 5 if, like, you go into 5 and then you try to go back to Persona 4. And you're like, oh, I don't like Persona 4 because it doesn't have this and this from 5 or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, but, I don't know. I just feel like it's important to play 4 first. Especially, in my opinion, because that's the game I prefer, so. But, it is what it is. It's nice that people are just playing these games in general. I know 5 got a lot of people into the series, so that's cool. But it just, 4 needs a port, it needs to go on Switch or something. Because not a lot of people have Vitas or Vita TVs, which is unfortunate. I didn't think they were ever going to kind of get to this level of value or whatnot, so that's really unfortunate. I'm glad I bought mine. Backup is a lot cheaper, So, I think Persona 4 Golden is a good beginner RPG, yes, but it all just depends. So, and I mean, I'm sure I don't have to say it, but Persona 4 Golden is a game I would give a 10 out of 10. It's one of a handful of games I would give that to, because it's just so perfect to me. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll talk about it more later or something too, but it's just like, I don't really know what to say. That's why I haven't reviewed most of these, like, top favorite games is because it's just like I don't even know what I would say at this point. I think I did a good job kind of summing up what the game's about and stuff. It's more a game where I would want you to experience it for yourself, and I wouldn't want to spoil too many things for you, which is why I haven't said as much as I could have said, especially about stuff in the story and whatnot, and about some of the characters and elements of those, and I don't even want to spoil any of that stuff for you guys, because that's a big part, a big piece of meat of the game there, you know? It's meat! I don't know, fuck, God. She's so annoying. My trial of the dragon! It's just that. Whenever she goes, like, really, with her voice, like, that's the worst, but she is not so bad outside of that, I guess. She's not great either, but anyway. Yeah, hopefully you got something out of this video in terms of, like, either a Persona 4 review or some good suggestions for a beginner RPG player, because I definitely wanted to also kind of incorporate elements of that into here, just kind of fill out the time for the review, because I don't know, like I said, yeah, I just didn't want to spoil anything about Persona 4, but I've rambled long enough. This has been JZNES saying keep it classic, stick around for more reviews, underrated games, and I'll see you guys in the next one. JZ out.